our dear audience, and welcome aboard. So today, Ilya.
Yes, hello everyone. Good to see you.
Yes, so me too. My name is Paulina. We'll be conducting this meeting, and our aim today is to give a general impression of what is David Crystal. Who is it?
And I think the amount of works of this renowned scholar is too vast to cover in one webinar. So we'll be focusing on some specific topics that he discussed previously, such as texting, global language, and the influence of pronunciation on the way we speak.
So we hope that we will all enjoy this meeting. Let's go ahead. So how can one describe David Crystal, a British linguist, academic, and author? He takes a position in the International Association of Teachers of English as a foreign language and the Association for Language Learning. He is the president of the Chartered Institute of Editing and Proofreading and the UK National Literacy Association. Also, David Crystal is a past president of the National Association for Professionals concerned with language-impaired children. He was also awarded the Order of the British Empire and became a Fellow of the British Academy. So, David Crystal has written, co-authored, and edited more than 800 books, plays, reviews, dictionaries, and articles. That's enormous. The next slide, please, Ilya. Thank you so much. Now, on the slide, you can see diverse academic subjects. Try to guess the ones where David Crystal has contributed and write their numbers in the chat box. You have 40 seconds. Please go ahead. Wow, so thank you very much for this impressive number of answers. And the point is that all the subject, and we don't know even more because David Crystal is still working, refer to David Crystal's scientific work. So all of them presented in the slide and even more. So the next one, please. But let's start with one subject that was not presented on the slide, but it is also of prime significance. So it's about global English. David Crystal suggests that a language becomes a global language because of the power of the people who speak it. The power of English was initially based on political, social, and military factors. And most notably is that it was the expansion of the British Empire first, and later the role of English as a language of the scientific, of industrial, financial, and even economic revolutions further just increased its influence. To be more specific, let us look at the very slide. So English became global because of the power of the British Empire. Then the American imperialism, the power of the Industrial Revolution, and actually technology and science are used with the English language. Then the power of money talks, because English is the language of the international banking. And the last one, culture power. So international ads, songs, and even internet are also in English. So to scrutinize this aspect, let us watch a short video fragment of David Crystal's speech.
Power means different things at different times. English first became international because of political power, military power, the power of the British Empire, really. But it isn't just political that takes a language around the world. There have got to be other factors too. A century later, we were talking about the 16th, 17th century there, we had the power of science, of technology, the Industrial Revolution. English is the language of science. That started then as something like 2/3 of the people who invented all the things that make modern society what it is, did so through the medium of the English language. And then in the 19th century, economic power. Money talks always, and the language it was talking in the 19th century was English, because America and Britain between them had the money markets of the world sewn up for the most part. And then in the 20th century, we have cultural power, with English being the language of the vast majority of the inventions that make modern society what it is. So it's English turning up in the, as it were, almost the right place at the right time during these last 400 years or so that has produced the enormous global status that it currently has.
So what do you, and here one can state a question, what do you personally consider as the reason for English being a global language? So we would like you to fill in the questionnaire that will appear soon. And the options to choose are world media is mostly in English, then traveling with English makes it easier and more convenient. And the last one, internet is affected by English.
We have our
Yeah,
first
could you please switch on the questionnaire for our dear audience to answer? Thank you.
Okay, perhaps 5 more seconds. Yep.
I guess it's enough.
Okay.
Yes, so I think we can finish with the questionnaire. And the point is we have very different answers. And the point is no particular answer is right, so can be considered as the right one. So all of them are partially true. So thank you very much for participating again. And now the next slide, please. Let's touch upon the very last option that was included in the questionnaire. If you remember, that was internet that is affected by English. So it's a common truth that the internet gives language a new medium for development and deployment. Furthermore, there are many ways of speaking online. You know all of them, I guess. You can chat, you can blog, you can use forums, you can Twitter, Instagram, send some instant messaging, and so on and so on. And all of them have their own specific rules and norms of the language. As David Crystal states, technology always changes a language. So he also points out that every new technology or even opportunity for communication produces a new kind of language. That's an interesting point. As it was in the past, let's just keep to some historical aspects of it. The printing press contributed to writing styles. Then the telegraph was invented, and the telegraph introduced a number of short forms designed to save money. And what happened next? Then was the telephone invented, and the telephone added new vocabulary into our language. For example, we're speaking about English one, of course, like dial or call, hang up. And actually, this was the invention that could be considered as the one that entirely changed the way with interpersonal communication and relationships. And now, what is happening? The internet has created a variety of new ways to talk about connections, and even more. So what is happening today? Just the very present situation. The internet has already created a special register, or we can also say a style of written language. And it's more casual than writing one. This does not mean that people constantly forget about all of the written rules that exist in the world. For example, if a person applies or just has a interview or or is participating in the conference, he is not likely to write the same as he or she writes in the internet. That's the point. But the same comes when we're speaking about some academic writing or even writings. So people would not write an academic paper in the same style as they would in a Facebook or Instagram or TikTok, for example. That's the point. So here, one is likely to raise a very significant question. Is there anything that David Crystal said about the way internet is changing English? Hopefully, we can pose this question to David Crystal. Let's see what he answers.
In the case of English, a new style of English. The language we use when we're blogging is not the same as the language we use when we're instant messaging, and so we can go on through all these different mediums and point to new styles of English that are emerging as a consequence. The actual language itself hasn't changed that much. It isn't the case that as you look through these different technological manifestations of English, you see new grammar, for instance. We don't get new patterns of grammar emerging, new types of verb ending or anything like that. Nor is there that much new vocabulary, actually. I mean, a few hundred new words have come into English as a consequence of the internet, but that's not very many, considering the more than 1 million words that there are in English. New pronunciations? Not really. New punctuation? Yes, a bit. You do certainly get new features of punctuation arriving on the internet. Emoticons, for example, being used in clever ways. People using punctuation in an exaggerated form that they never used to do before, simply because you can hold the key down. People can say, fantastic, exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark, and it can go on and on and on and on and on for as long as you like. So there are a few novelty features like that, but on the whole, you look at a screen and what you see on the screen is the same kind of English language that you saw before the internet came into existence.
Thank you very much, David Crystal. And now my colleague, Ilya, will continue speaking about something, I guess, very interesting. So.
Oh, yes, thank you, Paulina. And now we're moving on to some more particular aspects of the internet and how it affects our language. So I suggest talking about texting. Why texting is good for language, or is it? Let's have a look at a quotation of David Crystal's article. So last year in a newspaper article headed, "I hate text messages, how texting is wrecking our language," John Humphreys argued that texters are vandals who are doing to our language what did to his neighbors 800 years ago. They are destroying it, pillaging our punctuation, savaging our sentences, and raping our vocabulary, and they must be stopped. So I would like to ask you what you think about this sort of idea about texting, and this is where we have poll 2. So do you support the statement that you see on the screen now? All right, so what we see in the results is that half of you do not support it, but a whole half of people can actually agree with it in some way. And many people actually do. John Sutherland of University College of London says that texting is bleak, bald, and sad shorthand. It calls it drab shrink talk. Linguistically, it alls pig's ear, which makes dyslexia, poor spelling, and mental laziness. So texting is also called penmanship for illiterates. And there's a certain name given to those sorts of texts that people use on the internet. Perhaps you have some ideas what they might be called. If you do, please write them in the chat. We'll have a look before you know the answer, all right? So what do we call this sort of language that people use on the internet? Memes, all right. Okay. Memes are really everywhere, that's true. Any other guesses?
It's more about the internet, right? About memes.
Oh yes, they come together.
E-texts. Wow.
E-text, yes, okay. Thank you very much. Okay, so we're going to look at 3 terms that are usually given to this sort of language. The first one being textese, as we have Chinese. This is a very productive suffix. The second one is slanguage, which is a combination of slang and language. And the third one is a bit more negative, which is a digital virus. So these names in some way suggest the people's attitudes to those kinds of texts, which is often negative. Okay, moving on. Text and language has been changed a lot with the introduction of different technological invention, as Paulina has already mentioned. What do you think is the people's attitude to technology in relation to language? And this is where we have poll 3 for you. Okay, so I can see that the leading answer is that people treat it with some sort of apprehension. But in fact, we can summarize people's attitudes by looking at this cute little devil, because the invention of the printing was called the invention of the devil, because this thing would put false opinions into people's mind. The same technology is disastrous consequence for language. Scares also accompanied the introduction of the telegraph, telephone, and broadcasting. So people were actually afraid of new technology. And when texting came into use, there's been a variety of different emotions, from curiosity, suspicion, fear, confusion, antagonism, fascination, excitement, and enthusiasm, given that it is such a recent event. So there's a widespread idea that we've seen before that texting hinders literacy. Do you think it actually is true, or maybe not? And now we have poll 4. So is it bad for everyone? Is it bad for the young? Can it be actually good? Okay. Let's see the results. So some people do think that it's bad for everyone or for the young. This is actually the majority.
Yes,
But
the majority said about
yeah,
the young one. Only, yes. It's just a little bit smaller about texting is bad for all. It's a very interesting point, I guess.
yeah. And David Crystal actually thinks the other way around, that texting improves literacy or is capable of doing so. And let's have a look at some reasons underlying this idea. So texters use deviant spellings. We know it, and they also know that these spellings are deviant. There are studies claiming that children's literacy improves. And more than that, the more abbreviations we find in their messages, the higher children tend to score on their tests of reading and vocabulary. And even further, the younger they get their first phone, the higher their scores will be. This is explained with this statement that in order to be good at texting, one must have considerable literacy awareness, because texting presupposes a number of alternative spellings. For example, to write LOL, you need to know what it stands for. Or for example, BRB, which is be right back. This results from one's sensitivity to communicative needs of the textees, so the people we're writing to. And all that in combination gives the idea that it does work for the best. Another issue is that texting is really not that straightforward. Are there rules or not? So what do you think? Do texting has some special rules that people have to follow or not? This is poll 5. So is it about creativity or being understood, that is intelligible? Or do we not need rules at all if we talk about the internet?
What's your opinion about that? While people are still answering in the questionnaire.
Well, I think I would be a bit biased because I know what is coming. I think it's a bit, on the border between having rules and not having them. Would you
Yeah,
agree?
exactly. Yeah, I guess we're on the same page. Yes.
Okay, let's see the results of the polling. And people tend to think that intelligibility is the key, so being understood, which is true for language generally. So Texts do bring a whole set of linguistic rules, but they also know that they need to be understood. And here we have lots of correct answers because of that. Yes, this is true. So they alter mostly grammatical words, for example, you and to be, without altering much other content words. Another idea is that there are older and more conservative language users. And here we speak about some sort of standardized style with conventional spelling and punctuation. For example, a teacher sending a weather alert to their class is not going to use too many abbreviations, but this is also considered texting. And finally, institutional texts can forbid abbreviation, and there's a new notion of bad textiquette emerging. So there are rules, yes, there are rules for that, definitely. Another idea is that texting is unprecedentedly novel. So there's something we have not seen before. What do you think? Is this true? This is poll 6. And we also have a comment here about the way those texts are called, internet teas. This is also very interesting, like text teas, but with the internet. Yes, Alexander, thank you very much. All right, let's see the results. Some people think it is. Yes, we've got a split divide. Some people are in two minds about that. Do we have the results? Yes, these are the results. So it can't be novel. Probably it can't. Okay, and let's have a look. So the idea is that some of the texting messages can be found in pre-computer informal writing and date back 100 years or even more than that. Still further, the abbreviation I owe you is known from 1618. A modern kid's lol equals to an earlier generation's sword, which is sealed with a loving kiss. So we have this generation gap, which also includes some texting. Finally, forms as MSG and XLNT have also been used for quite a while, and David Crystal claims that almost any word can be abbreviated in this way. And if you look at this sentence, it is understandable. Finally, if we look at the dictionary of abbreviation, which has been created in 1945, such abbreviation as AGN for again, or GD for good, have been there. This is 50 years before texting was born, so there's nothing much novel about it. And now that we're talking linguistics, David Crystal is a linguist. Can we describe texting as a linguistic phenomenon? This is poll 7. Xmas, indeed. It is quite old as well. But have you ever considered texting in terms of linguistics?
Not till this moment. Now I have to consider this point, I guess, and think more about it.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, let's have the results. And the majority says there must be some features of texting. Yes, and linguists can do anything. This is true. And now we're going to have a look. The answer is definitely, of course. And let's have a look at some features of texting. Number one is shortened and full words, as in those two examples. Then we have non-standard spellings, some complex processes. In this abbreviation, we have a full word, an initialism, a shortened word, two logograms, an initialism, and a logogram. So a whole bunch of processes within just one word, abbreviated one. Addition of a plural ending, single letters, numerals, and symbols, which are called rebuses and are known for a while, as in to be and for you, and initial letters, as in N for no, GF for girlfriend, or call me back. So you can see that there are numbers from 1 to 5. I would ask you to try and deduce the meaning of those examples of textees and write them in the chat. Let's
Probably
see.
have some answers.
Yep, let's see if you're familiar.
So,
Paulina, you could probably read those out for us. So can you decipher any of those? For example, number 1, what could that be?
do you want me to answer?
Do
or
you know?
provide any ideas? No? Oh, okay. No, I keep silent.
I just thought maybe some of the participants will try to do that in the chat.
Yes, in the chat box.
Yes, let's give about a minute to think about. So we have 5 of those for you to think about. All right, thank you, Irina. Yes.
Yeah, we also have this interesting word that could be pronounced in 2 options. So as it is spelled like ASAP or just ASAP, and that's all.
True.
It's about phonetics, right?
Oh yeah, we're going to talk about that too. Okay. I want to be with you. Yes, this is number 4, and there's one more word there. I only want to be with you. Okay, yes. This is good. Do you think we should wait some more or reveal the answers?
Yeah, let's wait for a minute, I think.
Okay.
People are still thinking yes. Thank you very much for your answers, still.
We still got numbers 1 and 2. Number 5 as well. Yes, number 1, hold me close, exactly. Number 2 has to do with something unfinished. And number 5 is all about love. All right, so I think we should be revealing that. Paulina, will you do that?
Now it's your turn, and I will just listen and remember,
okay.
because I had ideas for 1, and that was it. So go ahead.
Okay, number 1 was hold me close. Yes. Number 2 is to be continued. Number 3 is see you tonight. Number 4, I only want to be with you. Yes, as was rightly guessed. And number 5, I only have eyes for you. This one is a bit tricky because of the spelling of I think. I only have eyes for you. All
And
right.
I think that the majority of our listeners have a very good language guess. Yes, that's it.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Professional texters.
Yes, even having some proficiency. Yeah. All right. So let's continue.
Okay, so after that, we've talked about it using on the internet, but can it be considered an expressive means, or is it just for chatting? This is our poll 8. But have you read any poems in textese?
Yeah, sure. I'm typing it right now.
Yeah.
For you.
Wow.
You'll receive it.
Wow.
And what about you?
No, I'm excited to read yours. All right, let's probably have the results. Deductively thinking it may be possible. Yes, this is probably why we're asking this question. And only on social media, right? Okay, so I'm going to answer this question. So people, as you all know, love playing with language. We create riddles, we solve crosswords, we play Scrabble, and invent new words all the time. And professional writers do the same. They find catchy advertising slogans, puns in newspaper headlines, writing poems, novels, and plays. This is something conventional, something we're used to, something we've seen and heard of. But there's also World Poetry Day that was held in 2007. And during this event, the second place went to this poem, which the author of which was in her late 60s. This is to cover the question of how old you should be to text. And this is what it looks like. This is a poem written in textese. Marina, could
And
you?
at the first glance, it looks like it's a Dutch language. Am I right?
Will you read it or should I?
I guess you'll be better with it.
Okay, so it goes like this. Oh, heart that soars, my love adores. He makes me live, he makes me give myself to him as my love pours. So in answering the question, yes, there's art, there are special SMS authors who do this sort of creativity, this sort of literature. Okay, and I think we've talked about it for quite a while. Now we're going to listen to what David Crystal has to say about texting.
Yeah, so let's do it.
So let's hear tonight's first theory. Welcome to the show. Can we have your name, please?
David Crystal.
And can we see your theory, please, David? Thank you very much. Your theory is that texting is good for the English language. Okay, what's your background, David? What's your credentials?
Well, texting is a kind of language. Language is studied by linguistics. I'm a professor of linguistics, have been for the last 32 years, and I've written a book on texting. Is that enough?
That's pretty good, David. Yeah, I'd say that was enough.
Okay.
All right, then. What are the myths that you want to debunk, then, about?
The myths are as follows. A lot of people believe that texting is done by kids only. Secondly, that the kids fill their text messages with abbreviations, entirely abbreviated these messages. Thirdly, that the messages, these abbreviations, are invented by the kids. It's a modern thing. Fourthly, because the kids are leaving the letters out, they don't know how to spell. Fifthly, because they don't know how to spell, they're putting all these things into their essays and into their examinations. And as a result, we're going to rear a generation of kids who are going to be totally illiterate. Right. And every one of those statements is a load of chicken droppings.
Can I just say, that's the teenagers applauding out there, but...
That's it. Okay. Is it possible you feel just a little too strongly about all this?
Well, let's go through them. The abbreviations, that's a myth, yeah? You say the kids...
Yeah, I mean, that's the first point. Well, the first point is that it's kids that do it. Not right. So. There are something like 3 billion mobile phones in the world at the moment. Half the world's population has got a mobile phone at the moment.
Yeah.
2/3 of those people text, and 80% of those people are adults, not kids at all.
I've got a question for you now. So of all the texts sent by adults, how many of them have a point?
All of them have got a point. Right. All of them. Nobody sends a text without there being a point. Yeah?
Well, that's not true.
Yeah, it is true. If you get a text from somebody which says, I'm on the train.
Yeah.
Yeah. You think that's absolutely total rubbish and trivial, and what are they doing? But the point is, they've sent it to you. They're thinking of you. For that moment in time, there's that little rapport between you and the person that sent the text.
Well, not if I get it and I think, why the hell is it? I don't care whether he's on the train.
No, but they're basically saying to you, Andy, I love you.
All right.
You know,
I'm feeling uncomfortable now, David.
Yeah.
All right, then. What about the accusation that kids can't, you know,
well, let's work our way through it.
Yeah.
When you actually collect a big pile of texts together and count up all the abbreviations that are in them, how many words are abbreviated, you find only 10% of the words in text messages are actually abbreviated.
Okay,
and that means that...
Paulina, thank you very much. I think this should do.
English, and the kids are not misspelling most of the time. Secondly, the kids made these things up? Not so. If you go back 100 years, you'll find abbreviations like C, U, later, and all of those. Queen Victoria did this. Lewis Carroll did this.
Sure.
Thirdly, kids can't spell because they leave letters out. Why are they leaving the letters out? Because it's cool to leave letters out. But if it's cool to leave a letter out, you've got to know it's there in the first place in order to leave it out.
Right, okay. All right, I'm frightened to ask the next question now.
Yes, I think it's enough for us.
Yeah, that's been very energizing. Okay, so I think the last question here to sum up all that we have about texting. So is it a good thing? What is your stance on it now? And this is where poll 9 comes in. And this is already something that you can potentially ask David Crystal during the NATE conference that we're about to have in June. Okay, let's probably see the results. Okay, there are people who are willing to ask about it. That's good. Yes, thank you very much for your answers. It is language evolution, as David Crystal puts it. So now I think I give the floor back to Paulina.
Yes, just the next slide, I guess. Right. Yeah, so Ilya just reviewed the topic of texting, of text messages. And I have a very particular question to you, dear audience, to put it in our chat box. So what is your opinion? Just how many messages are sent globally every year? Don't Google, please. Don't use any additional resources, just your thoughts about that. Yeah, so we have a number of answers. And do you know that it is 9 trillion text messages that are sent every year? And I guess because of our today's conversations is just a bit more. Yes. So, and now we can switch to the next slide. So here are the most common used abbreviations. I think you all got used to them, you know, all of them. So there is no point to stop. But I have a very intriguing fact that was revealed in one of the David Crystal's interviews. So the interview was logically devoted to text messages. And the thing is that it is not a modern trend. Queen Victoria used to play games involving abbreviations very much. And one of these abbreviations I can now text and send it to your chat box. And now you can also have any guesses and send them to the chat box, and I'll then tell you the right answer. Oh, I guess something went wrong. Just a second. No drama. Okay, thank you. Yes, that's it. So see you later. Thank you. Now, Leah, you can continue.
Oh, yes. So we've talked about texting. Now we'll move on to another topic that David Crystal is quite passionate about, and this is pronunciation. So auditory beauty lies in the ear of the listener, but to focus on sounds we don't like is to miss out on the richest power and beauty of the English sound system. And I would like to run question 10 right now for you. So do you think you ever evaluate people by the way they speak? Okay, I think we can have a look at the results. Sure thing, everyone admits it, and I like it that there are only 2 people who think it's impolite to be judgmental. Okay, but we're linguists here, right? We're just not judging it, but analyzing. And this is precisely what David Crystal thinks. When they analyzed the Radio 4 it was, so people complained a lot about the pronunciations they didn't like. And they didn't just go, well, I didn't like that. They were horrified, appalled, dumbfounded, aghast, and outraged. So they used lots and lots of emotive words to describe the speech of other people. And there's a very common phenomenon in the English language, the intrusive R, as in law and order, which David Crystal thinks is a terrorist attack because people so negatively talk about it. So, and why does that happen, that people cannot ignore those pronunciations they don't like? Could you probably write your guesses in the chat box? What do you think is the reason that we cannot just listen to it and be fine with it?
We have one answer and now 2 of them. So the first one was about habits. Right? Possible, I think.
Could be. They know other ways. Okay, any superstition? Inner teacher works, yes. This is good. It's really good. Can't make them angry. People easily concentrate on something bad. All right, yeah. This is
It's just our nature, human nature. Yes.
true. All right, David Crystal also gives a reason for that. And this is a bit different. So he says that if we have a word or a grammatical construction that people misuse, it doesn't happen that frequently. There are millions of words and you do not mispronounce one word or misuse it all the time. But every word has to be pronounced. Dislike of an accent or the way someone drops consonants, stresses, or intones a sentence with a rising inflection, there's no escape. You cannot just stop hearing that. So this is why you cannot ignore it. It is there all the time in your ears. And because of that, people can form some false impressions, but does pronunciation tell us a lot about people? Or is it more in vocabulary or in grammar? This is poll 11. Okay, I think we could see the results now. Yes, 89% of you do believe that it expresses one's identity. And I think you're on the same page with David Crystal here. So identity expressor is how we can label pronunciation. This is what makes someone sound British, American, Indian, from Liverpool, Newcastle, or London. Ethnic group, social class, education, or occupation can be easily deduced by listening to a person. We also have a study of forensic phonetics, which deals with criminal investigation based on the way people speak. And it's so easy to trace you down on the way you use your language and in terms of phonetics as well. And because of that, it is always a potentially sensitive subject, definitely. So we've talked about being understood, but there's also such an idea of phonetic aesthetics. What do you think is the key here? What do you think people are more focused on, intelligibility or aesthetics? Elena, have you ever thought about this one?
Honestly saying no.
No, all right. But
Now about you, because I think you're posing this question on purpose, so
I don't know, but this communicative method, we always are told that intelligibility is the key, right? Yes, this is the results. Most people think it is intelligibility, but if we take a closer look, identity is primary, and people tend to complain about the way of saying things. If we go back to those BBC radio listeners who are native speakers, there are lots of aesthetic criticism about someone sounds ugly, or they have sloppy pronunciations, or they just dislike accents. So the comments about unintelligibility are there when we speak too quickly or when we mumble some words, but they are just occasional and not that frequent. So not the content mattered, but delivery, the way someone sounds, the way they use their intonation, and all of the other phonetic aspects. So those are matters of taste rather than being understood, which is crucial for language. And I think the final question here, after hearing all that, do you believe pronunciation to be of importance for a language learner? And this is our final poll tonight. And what is the extent, perhaps, to which we should go when we study pronunciation?
I guess while people are still making the answers. So for instance, we're talking about some communicative approach, yes, when we don't teach people, who are native speakers. And if we're, again, taking, or I don't know, language immersion approach, yes, it is it's much more easier to gain knowledge. So even pronunciating parents, because you actually live in the area, so in the environment. Yeah, and let's see what we have. Now, the results are already here. So yeah, most of people think that it is as long as we are understood.
Yeah, so intelligibility wins over aesthetics. But this is, I think, an everlasting question, but thank you so much for your opinions. Phonetics, and again, phonetics, there cannot be too much phonetics. So this is what I would like to end this part with. Maybe some final words from Padima?
Yeah, so I think that there's actually not only about phonetics, but also about David Crystal and his brilliant English. So, and we're extremely happy to announce that David Crystal will take part in the 26th NATE online conference on the digital change in English language teaching. And you can pose a question to him already now. This is it.
Yes, I think that there are a number of links available. There you can use a QR code to submit your question. The most interesting of those will be answered by David Crystal in our section. I think we should thank everyone for being with us. You've been a very, very active audience.
Thank you very much for participating and listening to us. Yes.
Yes, this is it. Probably if you have some questions, we'll dedicate some 5 more minutes for it. And you can ask them either in the chat or over voice.
Could you send the presentation? Sorry, could you send the presentation?
Yeah, I think we could post it somewhere. Yes, I think that shouldn't be a problem.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Would you send it via email?
I guess we can probably post it in our Instagram account of Linguistics and not Mrs. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that everyone can.
Very convenient.
Yes. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. There are so many nice comments. Wow.